Hi everybody, I'm Arthur. And I'm Buster. Welcome back to my podcast. If you are just joining, welcome. Today we will be talking about my first VHS, which is episode 13 of my podcast. It's called Arthur School of Hard Knocks. This VHS includes Arthur versus the Very Mean Crossing Guard, Buster Makes the Grade, and DW all fired up. First, let's talk about Arthur versus the Very Mean Crossing Guard, which is episode 48A. And here's our special guest, the Brain. Hello. Hi, Brain. How's it going? Well, I was just doing some scientific experiments. Cool. That's using your brain. Speaking of using his brain, he uses his brain in this episode. So let's get started. This episode starts out with me looking under DW's bed for monsters. I told the viewers that DW is so gullible. That means easy to fool. Right. Anyway, I gave examples about how DW is so easy to fool, like when I told her sweaters were a kind of animal, and if she stayed in the tub after she pulled out the plug, she'd get sucked in. Wow, I bet she wouldn't take a bath for weeks when you told her that. Yup. Anyway, I told her there were no monsters under her bed and to try not to think about them. After the title card was read, me and the Brain walked out of school and toward Brain's house to play Fool the Mule. Once we got to the corner, we noticed a new crossing guard. It turned out Mrs. Hurley, our original crossing guard, had gone out of town. Once we crossed the street, the new crossing guard told us to give him $10. The thing was, we didn't have $10. We always crossed the street for free. He let us off the hook for now, but if we took too long, he would send his goons after us. Arthur, what are goons? I'll tell you in a minute, Buster. Anyway, the scene transitions to Brain's house. The Brain checked his piggy bank. He had exactly $5.37. I couldn't afford to walk home from school. Yeah. Anyway, in the imagination sequence, the Brain was seen in the middle of the crosswalk. Muffy saw him. He needed $4.63 to get across. Back to reality, the Brain and I worried that the crossing guard would send his goons. So what are goons anyway, Arthur? Well, not what we thought at first. In the imagination sequence, I thought goons were baboons. In reality, they're bad guys. Back to reality, the Brain told me we would come up with a plan by tomorrow. The scene transitions to me and the Brain on the swings. He showed me his ideas on how to get his way home. Plan A was the bridge. Plan B was the tunnel. Plan C was the balloon. There were drawbacks, though. The Brain had really thought it out, but none of them worked. The scene then transitions to me and the Brain walking. When we got to the corner, I turned to go home and save my money, while the Brain tried to handle with a mean crossing guard. He said he would turn me into the police. For what? For perpetrating criminal acts. Ooh. Anyway, the scene transitions to the Brain sleeping in his bed. In his dream, his house was sold to the mean crossing guard. I thought he would live in a tent because it might be fun. Back to reality, the Brain screamed. Then the scene transitions to school. I told the Brain he could stay at my house because Grandma Thora was babysitting and she says yes to anything. So the scene transitions to the crossing guard. The Brain and I weren't crossing, though. Then he told us that he had cameras and all the stop signs. Then the scene transitions to my house. The Brain and I were so scared about the cameras that we thought there could be one in Stanley, my teddy bear. We talked in code. Then DW entered the scene to tell me to check her bed. I told her to go to sleep. Then the scene transitions to me waking up because I had an idea. Grandma Thora said yes. Then the scene transitions to Grandma Thora driving in a car. You see, the plan was to let her drive so that we won't have to deal with a mean crossing guard. Speaking of the crossing guard. Oh yeah, we noticed him. His name is Ted, by the way. You should have mentioned that before. Oops. Anyway, the Brain and I told Grandma Thora that Ted wants money from us. She stopped the car and went to have a conversation with him. Then Ted apologized for teasing us. Then the scene transitions to me and the Brain talking on the phone when DW told me she heard something move under her bed. I told her there weren't any monsters under the bed. It turned out she had always known that, but she wanted me to check anyway. Then the scene transitions to me and the brain seeing Ted again. Now that we were friends, we talked in code. And that's how the episode ends. Brilliant, Arthur! Thanks, Brain, and thank you for coming on to the show. Certainly.